Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by a Full Press Coverage. Sap, we've been talking a lot about the individual NBA playoff games, but we would be remiss to not be talking about Kevin Durant's new feuds, as we do every couple of weeks. Check in with the guy that many people believe to be the current best player in the NBA. You don't, but maybe at worst, he's the second best player in the NBA right now. But he is also somebody who cannot help himself from feuding with people. This week, it is Scottie Pippen and Jackie MacMullan. Sort of, pick any two people in the world. Kevin Durant may be feuding with them. This week, it just happens to be a very well-respected NBA writer and a Hall of Fame multi-time champion. Sap, Durant, we know how this routine goes. He feels slighted. Something said on Twitter or in a magazine, an interview. He has rabbit ears, which, Sap, does that saying come from the fact that rabbits have big ears, or from the TV formerly having, the rabbit ears?
That's a good question, Jet. Yeah, because, rabbits do have huge ears. But then you do have the rabbit ears that, you would know nothing about, but I could remember.
I know a little bit about it. I was born in 1989, Sap. A little bit.
Yeah, they weren't really around all that much then. But growing up, the Bruins were on a UHF station, and we used to have to fool around to get a shadow off the ice and all that stuff until we got cable, and then we were able to watch it on Channel 38. So I know all about that stuff. So you were adjusting I don't know what it is. The rabbit ears, yeah.
Little John Sapichetti was moving the things to see the Bruins, okay?
Oh, yeah, because the whole family would sit and watch the Bruins. I've said this a million times. As popular as the Patriots were, with Brady and Gronk and Belichick and all of that, and as popular as the Celtics were in the 80s, and then for a brief time, with Garnett, Pierce, and Allen, no team in the city has ever been as popular as the Bruins in the very late 60s to early 70s with Orr and Esposito and all of those great players. But Durant does certainly have rabbit ears, and it kind of all started because Scottie Pippen did an interview with GQ. He's got a bourbon brand now that he's pushing.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? Everybody's got something, a bourbon brand, a tequila brand. Why not? And Scottie Pippen, I think he feels slighted about The Last Dance because the 10-part series obviously elevated Michael Jordan to beyond what he really is, which is, I think, the second greatest player ever, but the most impactful player in NBA history, maybe the most impactful athlete in the history of this country, not named Jackie Robinson, because that's a different argument. But Pippen, I think, felt very slighted by that because The Last Dance made Pippen come off as kind of soft and whiny and weak and all of those things. And I think he's kind of pissed at that, so he's decided to write a book. And that's coming out soon. So he's promoting the book in the bourbon company. So he did an interview with GQ, and he felt the need to go at Kevin Durant and say, Durant isn't LeBron James. Now, Scottie Pippen loves LeBron James. I think up until about 2 years ago, he kept saying that LeBron was better than Michael Jordan. Then he changed his mind. I think if you asked him today, he would say that LeBron's the greatest player ever. So I'm in agreement with Scottie Pippen on that. But this is a tactic everyone uses, right? So Pippen, to build up his brand as a player, is going to kind of knock his former teammate, right? Because he wants to be the co-star with Michael Jordan, although that was a classic Batman Robin. There's no question that Jordan was the alpha and Pippen was the two guy. So, but to push your brand, you want to maybe diminish Jordan's accomplishments, say, hey, Jordan probably doesn't win those titles without me, which is the truth. I mean, Scottie Pippen was a great player. He was a top 5 player in the league for half a dozen years. Everyone does that. So to make Pippen feel better about himself, he pumps up LeBron, saying LeBron's better than Michael Jordan. So I get that. So I don't know what relationship exists now between Jordan and Pippen. I'm sure it's horrible because Jordan, he may not have rabbit ears, but he holds grudges. I mean, he's aggressive, whereas Kevin Durant's passive aggressive. I mean, Jordan is in your face with this, feelings towards former friends, whether it's Charles Barkley or anyone else. He holds grudges. Durant's kind of that passive aggressive. So, of course, Kevin Durant had to jump into this part of it when he said that LeBron elevates his teammates more, and maybe Durant in that series against Milwaukee should have tried to include his teammates more than taking all those shots and getting exhausted. My point on that is that no one really stepped up for the Brooklyn Nets in that series. I mean, I don't think Durant's a selfish player, right?
No, you could bash Durant for that series.
No, he was phenomenal. I mean, he's not a selfish player, Durant. I mean, if Durant was a selfish player, he would have averaged 35 a game in his career. He's not that guy. So, of course, Durant's like pushing back on Scottie Pippen's shortcomings. There was the headache game 7 of the 1990
I'll read the
Conference
tweets.
Finals. Yeah,
Sap,
go ahead.
He said, didn't the great Scottie Pippen refuse to go in the game for the last second shot because he was in his feelings? His coach drew up a play for a better shooter. And then he also wrote, this guy, Scott, didn't even call him Scottie. This guy, Scott, also wanted to enjoy his summer, so he chose to rehab during the season. LOL. Yo, at Scottie Pippen, they followed Phil, not you. Okay, that's...
Well, they followed Michael more than they followed Phil. Phil followed Michael, right? I mean, Michael was the reason that team won 6 championships. We know that.
Michael Jordan's almost like the boogeyman. Like, you don't mention him in tweets or anything because, like, you're right, he's an ultimate grudge holder. So even Durant, who, like, holds grudges, I think fears Michael Jordan all these years later.
Everyone does, right?
Just don't mention him.
I'm not going to get in a feud with that guy.
Yeah.
Because is Durant a Nike guy?
Yes, he is.
Okay, so if you're a Nike guy, you play nice with Michael Jordan because Michael Jordan is Nike.
You're better off just, if you're going to say anything, just be like, yep, he's the greatest player of all time. And that's it. Anything else, you worry he could perceive it somewhat wrong.
Which Durant will say to elevate himself over LeBron James. This is the game everyone plays. I'm sure that Michael Jordan would say Kobe Bryant's better than LeBron, even though no one thinks that, because now that makes Jordan even that much better because no one thinks that Kobe was as good as Michael. So this is something Skip Bayless actually is a master of. I mean, Skip Bayless thinks that Bill Belichick is this overrated coach and that all the Super Bowls were because of Tom Brady. I mean, it's a tactic we all use.
He builds up Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving to a point where it's ridiculous.
And Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade and Ray Allen and Anthony Davis and Alex Caruso and all of these guys. So I can't believe I just put Alex Caruso in the same sentence with all those guys, but you get my point. So here's Kevin Durant doing what Kevin Durant does. So he's going after Scottie Pippen, and I think it's great. I mean, this is what makes the league so intriguing. Kevin Durant just had an incredible playoff series against the Milwaukee Bucks, and now people are talking about this, which leads me to believe that Kevin Durant can't help himself. I think he's got masochistic tendencies. Like, he just came off this incredible series where I think he may have elevated himself to being the greatest player in the NBA. I think it's close, he and LeBron. And again, comparing those two guys is difficult. Durant's a scorer. LeBron's an all-around player. But now we're talking about his feud with Scottie Pippen and, to a lesser degree, Jackie MacMullan, one of the most respected journalists in NBA history, one of the nicest people that you could ever meet, and he's feuding with Jackie Mack, which is like unthinkable.
Yeah, we've obviously been doing this podcast now for a full season, Sap, and we've had countless shows going over Durant's feuds, which is it's almost comical at this point. But Jackie MacMullan was talking. She didn't even say anything bad, for crying out loud. She said, I believe in talking to him that his goal is to win 3 championships with the Brooklyn Nets and make that his home and his legacy. For some reason, that pissed him off. God forbid.
And that's not a quote either, right? That's not a quote. She didn't quote Kevin Durant. She said,
I believe.
Talking with him, I believe that's what his goal is. Great. He wants to win 3 championships. God bless him. I mean, we mock LeBron for getting up on stage and going, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. And here's Durant. Again, this is kind of a compliment, and he gets pissed off.
Yeah, and this is what he said about that. He said, once again, I don't even talk like this. But what do you mean you don't talk like this? She didn't quote you. That's the thing.
Didn't quote you. Right.
Plus, I don't have a relationship with Jackie for us to have in-depth conversations about my intentions as a basketball player. You need to have a close relationship with somebody to have a conversation with your intention as a she's not asking about what your life plan is after you retire, or what
she's not his damn psychiatrist, which I think he needs one. I think everybody needs.
This is a guarded secret. I want to win a championship. I would never reveal that to anybody except for my closest personal friends.
Yeah, what's he playing for? Now, if it was Kyrie Irving, I might say, well, that's debatable because we don't know what the hell Kyrie's goals are, right? Durant, I think, would like to surpass LeBron in championships, right?
Kyrie's goals are to burn it down, burn the whole system.
Any way he can. Yeah, he's really
the Joker in Batman. He's a burn it all down.
But now we see LeBron has 4 titles and Durant has 2. Don't you think somewhere in Durant's soul he would like to surpass LeBron for titles?
Yes, but God forbid you say that.
Yeah.
I get she plays an opinion-based sport, but she framed this like we're friends. We're not. Okay.
She didn't frame this as if they were friends because it wasn't even a quote. She didn't throw out there, I had dinner with Kevin Durant last week, and
No, she said in
between
talking to him,
appetizer and
I'm sure they've spoken.
She's one of the most respected journalists in the sport. She's in the goddamn Hall of Fame. She works for ESPN. She has incredible connections. She has for years. I mean, so yeah. I mean, what is her problem? I mean, we know that LeBron has a really good relationship with, say, Rachel Nichols.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think if Rachel Nichols came out with something like this about LeBron that he'd flip out? No.
And Stephen A. Smith too. Same thing. He has a good relationship with him as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
that's. I don't know. Is it? I don't know. I can't get into this guy's head, Sap. It makes no sense.
Don't try. The
Scottie Pippen one I get because it slighted Durant, so it pissed him off. Everything that's a slight that slights Durant, he hears about, it pisses him off. I at least can rationalize that. I think he's way too sensitive. Yep. But whatever. I understand that. This one makes no sense to me because she, 1, didn't quote you. 2, said something positive that your goal is to win 3 championships. What would you prefer she say? That your goal is to win no championships? Your goal is to win 5 championships? I just don't know what he wants.
That's Jaylen Brown's goal, but they got to get to a finals first.
Well, he was being interviewed by Taylor Rooks there, and he was trying to impress her.
He was distracted like we all were with. By the way, have you seen Paul George's girlfriend?
No, but I've seen Ime Udoka's wife, Nia Long.
Oh, very attractive too. And Kawhi's got a very nice girlfriend as well.
Someone said hide her from Tristan Thompson. The first
I would think
practice.
so. Yeah, and hide all the women from Paul George because he had issues in Indiana with Roy Hibbert's wife. So that's not a good thing.
Right.
For
I
a
forgot
team.
about that.
I would say that Paul George likes big-breasted women. We'll go with that. And Kawhi has a very attractive girlfriend as well. Kawhi didn't sit on the bench last night.
He sat in the box.
But
he went into the locker room at halftime.
Yeah, that's good. Kawhi's a unique guy.
What's he going to do on the bench? Yell? He's not going to do anything. What's the point?
Oh, my God, though. If LeBron was up in the owner's box or in some box, he'd get crucified for that.
Yeah,
Why isn't he on the bench?
Well, he did miss some games when he was hurt and didn't go to the bench, and he got criticized for that, which, whatever. I mean, at this point, what pissed me off the most was that Kyrie was on the bench for Game 7 of this Nets game, and a couple of years ago with the Celtics, he couldn't be bothered to go to Game 7 of that one
because he expected to win Game 7, and there was no one on the other team that he disdained closely, remotely to LeBron James. Kyrie Irving could not deal with LeBron James winning Game 7 at TD Garden 3 years ago. That he just couldn't deal with that.
Yeah, no, he's. I'm not going to get into this because
he makes Kevin Durant seem stable. Right now, James Harden, of the 3 superstars in Brooklyn, James Harden's by far the most stable guy, right? I mean, he played through a hamstring injury. He doesn't seem like a lot of work. I mean, I know he quit on his team. He's not the first nor the last guy that's done that. But it seems like of the 3 superstars, that James Harden's the easiest one to deal with. He seems pretty set.
Yeah, now you're hearing, there's some whispers that the Nets would like to explore some Kyrie Irving offers in the offseason.
Yeah.
I think that they're treading very carefully because of how close him and Durant are. And obviously you cannot upset or get rid of Kevin Durant because he's, as he goes, the franchise goes right now. But I think they know in the back. I mean, he could blow things up anytime he chooses. And so you don't want that guy in your team. The story is that it pissed him off, as it should have, when he took a break in the middle of the season for seemingly no reason, and then went to a birthday party for himself with unmasked in Canada. He's just such a pain in the ass. So yeah, I don't blame them for putting some very quiet feelers out there to see if anybody would take him, but who would take him on at this point, especially without his buddy there? He would be
half the league would take him on. The guy is so damn talented.
No, I know he is, Sap, but I'm saying without the Kevin Durant aspect of it, where you have the better player and the guy who can kind of keep him in line a little bit by saying, please don't blow this thing up. I want to win a title here. Like, he's liable to do what he did to the Celtics to any team he goes to if he's unhappy there.
Imagine him in Philadelphia, although I doubt Brooklyn would trade him to Philadelphia. It's a direct competitor, rival. I'm sure. I wonder if the Lakers would be interested, but they just don't have much to trade, or the salary
the Lakers have nothing to trade
situation.
Do you think he'd play with LeBron again?
Who knows with him? Who knows? I mean, his last year in Boston, he goes, "Yeah, I talked to Braun," and now it's like you hate the guy. Now you're talking to him. I mean, sometimes I don't think he's ever going to mature. That's the issue. Sometimes, though, when you mature, you realize that, you know what, maybe LeBron was the right guy for me to play with.
Yeah, but the problem is, Sepp, he thinks he's the most mature.
Right, which is scary.
Did you see the picture?
That's the biggest reason. That's what the biggest reason, Jet, that I did not pick what you were saying. Brooklyn was going to unquestionably win the title, and the way they were playing when they got all three guys on the court together, it sure as hell looked like that. There's just something about Kyrie Irving. He has more masochistic tendencies than Kevin Durant, if that's possible. I mean, I'm never going to judge a player and say, well, he should have played through an injury. But there are people saying maybe he should have got out there for Game 7 with the ankle. I don't know how bad that ankle was. I'll give James Harden credit. James Harden went out there at probably 40% and tried. I mean, he didn't do much, but at least he was out there.
I don't know if you're on Instagram, Sap, but Kyrie Irving posted this photo today on his Instagram.
I saw that. Yep. Yep. He's at the whiteboard. Yep.
Solving equations.
Hey, that's what he does.
He's figuring out how to get us to Mars to see if the Earth is flat or not. Who posts that picture?
He's got a whiteboard with a permanent marker, right? Not an erasable.
It was a gold
marker.
Permanent marker.
Yeah, and it's Kyrie Irving. Look, if I was a general manager, I would probably take all the Duke players off my draft board. Like, there's something about him. There's a lot of assholes that would. I mean, look, Jason Tatum is Grant Hill's like a different situation. Grant Hill.
That was 30 years ago.
They were almost 30 years ago, and Grant Hill's like the most mature guy you get. Grant Hill to me is like Derek Jeter. Like their parents did a phenomenal job raising them. They're really solid.
Tatum's
guys,
not an asshole. He's just
aloof.
Likes his brand.
Yeah, he's aloof, and he's kind of a pretty boy, which is fine. If he's 6'10", he's a good-looking guy. The girls like him. He's got the adorable kid. But I mean, even with the guy that went to Duke, it was the second pick after DeAndre Ayton, Marvin Bagley the third.
Marvin Bagley the third, yeah.
Like, isn't he more interested in being a rapper than a basketball player at this point? Which a lot of guys are. But
it's a tough pick. He's quickly become the Darko Milicic of that draft.
I tweeted that out last week. Yeah, because you got DeAndre Ayton, you got Luka, and you got Trae Young. They're like, oh my God, this draft is going down as an all-time great draft potentially. And then you got him as the number 2 pick.
I mean, you sort of expect that out of the Kings. You didn't expect it out of the Pistons, who are a very well-run organization. I think which makes it more shocking. But the Kings, you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. They fucked this one up royally.
Imagine if the Pistons had won that draft lottery and got LeBron, like because they were ready made to win. Well, they won a championship that year, right?
I mean, yes, they did, and they went to 6 straight conference finals or something like that.
They would have. If he had been the first,
any of those guys, Bosh,
Dwayne Wade,
Carmelo, Wade, they would have ripped off a couple of championships, but they picked literally the worst player in the draft.
Yeah, it's like just pick anybody but this guy, and your dynasty or whatever you want to call it, your really good run is going to continue on. But no, Durant. Hey, look, we've probably done a 7 or 8 podcasts just on Kevin Durant and him fighting with people on Twitter, which is pretty amazing for a guy who's a phenomenal player. But I think it all started earlier in the week with a subject I wanted to talk about, because Steve Kerr, who played with Michael Jordan and coached Kevin Durant, said that Durant's more gifted than Jordan. And of course, everyone starts flipping out about that, saying, how can you say that? I've been saying that for years. More gifted doesn't mean greater. Like, Kevin Durant can do more offensively than any player I've ever seen. I don't even know anybody who would finish second in that debate, right? I mean, as I've said before, if there's 25 different ways to... No, because Kareem can't hit threes.
No, you're saying finish second.
Oh, I don't even know. Like, probably
right.
Jordan, right? I mean, like, okay, Wilt and Kareem were dominant down low, and Shaq was dominant down low, and Jordan and Kobe were relentless. They played like lunatics out there. But in terms of skill set, this guy is a giant version of George Gervin with a better perimeter game. Like, he's got a handle of a guard. I mean, it's like, as I've said, if there's 25 different ways to score a basket, he can score 35 ways. Like, there's ways that no one else can even think of. His ability to shoot from any angle, any distance. in any situation is unsurpassed. So, yeah, he's more gifted than Michael Jordan as a scorer, right? Not as an all-around player. I mean, Jordan, better defender. They're both about the same as passers and rebounders, again, factoring in their position.
Jordan probably a better athlete overall in terms of jumping ability. So
Durant hasn't changed his body since he entered the league. Jordan got jacked up. Jordan got strong, and that's what he had to work his ass off to get through the Pistons, because the Pistons were physical. He looked at it, and Pippen looked at it, that like, we got to get stronger for this. But here's a comparison, and there's a few of them in different sports. I think the best one I heard this week, and it's spot on. Who's the greatest wide receiver in the history of football?
Jerry Rice.
Jerry Rice. Like, I think we all agree with that. It's kind of like Jordan, although I think LeBron's better than Jordan. But let's say Jordan is the greatest player of all time. Jerry Rice, the greatest wide receiver
Jerry Rice
of all
by
time.
a mile.
Right. Randy Moss was more gifted. Randy Moss, 6'4",
without question,
could run a 4.25 40, ran every route possible, could do anything, but he wasn't maniacal like Jerry Rice. He wasn't as focused as Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice and Michael Jordan may be the two most focused athletes we've ever seen, along with, say, Tom Brady, right? I mean, they were just like so focused.
I think you're making an excellent point, Sap. I think that's a great cross-sport comparison too. In terms of Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice, some people, especially pre-Tom Brady, considered him to be the greatest football player of all time.
The three guys that come up in discussion as the greatest football players of all time are Brady, Jim Brown, and Jerry Rice. I mean, you could start talking about defensive players, but those are certainly the guys.
Joe Montana, somewhat too.
Yeah, below them. But now the debate's over. That Brady's the greatest quarterback.
Except for Rob Parker and
Rob
Max
Parker
Kellerman
and a few other guys that think that somehow think that 4 is greater than 7. But another spot cross-sport reference would be even in golf. And I've talked to guys that really follow golf. They think Phil Mickelson is more naturally talented than Tiger Woods, but Tiger Woods is a greater golfer. I'll go to my favorite quarterback. I think Aaron Rodgers is the most gifted thrower of the football I have ever seen, and a lot of people agree with that. But we all agree that Tom Brady's the greater quarterback. I mean, it happens that way. I mean,
listen, Tom Brady's very gifted. I think there's been many more physically gifted quarterbacks.
Sure.
I think he would say the same thing.
Patrick Mahomes is
but he has the extra sort of non-tangible drive, or his brain, processes things faster. But in terms of guys who have more physical talents than Brady, I mean, that happens all the time. There's a lot of guys that have more physical talents than Tom Brady.
Rodgers can throw every pass that Brady can throw, but Brady can't throw every pass that Rodgers can. But Brady's the better quarterback. I mean, that's just something I have to deal with as an Aaron Rodgers guy. Yeah, I mean, that's what makes sports so interesting. So that's where we're at with Durant. More gifted, 7 feet tall, Chet, with the handle of a guard who can shoot from 40 feet. I mean, it's effortless. It's like this guy's putting up 40 points without much of an effort.
I have no problem saying that.
No, again, I'm sure Jordan is ready.
Better is different than more gifted.
Totally different thing. Yeah, like some people have an incredible voice, right? But maybe they're not the musician or the performer that someone else is.
Right.
It's very, very common in any kind of comparison.
Sep, the last thing I want to talk about today is I'm glad you brought up Duke. And I don't think I didn't prep you for this, so I'm glad, because I'm going to get your honest reaction to it. And another Duke guy made headlines this week, Sap. Jay Williams, former Duke product, former number 2 pick of the draft as well.
Seems like a nice guy. I wouldn't put him in the category of being an asshole, but he also is a bit full of himself, I would say. But that's okay. To be in that position, you kind of have to be.
He reacted to the allegedly reacted to the Ime Udoka hiring of the Celtics by tweeting out, "Congrats to Ime Udoka. Wow, first black head coach in Celtics NBA history," and paid his dues. And then the black fist emoji over and over again. Quickly deleted because roundly mocked, and then said somebody had hacked into my thing and tweeted that I've now changed my password. Let's start with the fact that, Sap, not just was the original tweet wrong factually, it was, I mean, you can't say things that are much more wrong than that. Not only have the Celtics, it's not like it was long ago history too. The Celtics had the first black head coach and their most recent coach, Brad Stevens, also black, and in between several black head coaches. This is the problem I had with it, Sap. And before even getting into the fake, my Twitter was hacked excuse, Boston now has this perception
Right.
somewhat fair of being a racist city. We've talked about this at length now. This feeds into that perception that the Celtics are a racist organization. Everything about Boston permeates racism, from the people on the streets to the sports teams. The Celtics, we've talked about this again, are the Brooklyn Dodgers of the NBA. They have been, their race track record is sterling. This is, it's ignorant, and it helps feed and fuel that perception that everything about Boston is racist. So the initial tweet was not just factually problematic, but intellectually problematic too.
Felt like a drunk tweet, right? Like, is this guy serious tweeting this out, right? I mean, you don't have to go that far back to see an African-American coach with the Celtics. Doc Rivers won a title here in 2008 and coached here till 2013. ML Carr, Satch Sanders, K.C. Jones won 2 titles. Bill Russell won 2 titles as a player coach. Like, anybody that knows anything about the NBA, a casual fan will know that the Celtics have been at the forefront of race relations within the league far better than any other team. This would be like some idiot coming out and tweeting, I just wish the Brooklyn Dodgers or LA Dodgers would have a black second baseman. And then you'd have to be reminded, oh, by the way, Jackie Robinson played second base for the Brooklyn Dodgers starting in 1947. It's just own it. If you own it and say, oh, my God, my bad, I apologize to the Celtics and the city of Boston for putting this out there, because you're right, because there are going to be people out here that don't have the knowledge that we have or the sense of history. You're going to say, really? Yeah, this is pretty true. They finally got a black head coach. No, they had 5 other guys that were black head coaches and successful. I mean, it wasn't like that Red Auerbach was hiring coaches to be token coaches. I mean, Bill Russell won 2 titles. K.C. Jones won 2 titles. Danny Ainge hired Doc Rivers, won a title. No, it's just if you own it, say it was just an honest mistake. Don't come out with my account was hacked, because it is. Is it ever hacked at any other moment? It just happened to be hacked at this one particular time.
And to congratulate Ime Udoka, yeah. Also, someone you could do like forensic audits of tweets in terms of like, is this like you do with handwriting something? Is this how somebody tweets? And it's exactly his style. He uses those emojis all the time.
Yep.
Also, we've seen true Twitter hacks. Here's what happens in Twitter with actual Twitter hacks. You tweet something outrageous, like, F the government, like Epstein is still alive, something like that. You'll tweet pornography.
Yep.
If you hack somebody, or it will be some sort of like phishing scam, like for a company that is trying to steal money from you, a credit card scam or something like that. Not this. Like, who would take the time to hack Jay Williams of all people? You could hack Stephen A. Smith's Twitter. So Jay Williams' Twitter, and then post congratulating Ime Udoka with a thing about this. It clearly came from him. Nobody on earth believes that his Twitter was hacked for this purpose. And he just admit it and say you're sorry, because again, it does damage to the Celtics organization. It does damage to the city of Boston, because it fuels the perception that this man, why has it taken this team so long to hire a black coach when they were the first freaking team to do it? It's insane. And it just pisses me off that it's not just Jay Williams, but when people go to this excuse of his hack, just own up to it. And I know it's embarrassing. He's a paid analyst. He should know this. Hell, I'm sure he's interviewed Doc Rivers many, many times in his career, probably while he was the coach of the Celtics. Heck, I think he played against the Celtics when Doc Rivers was the coach of the Celtics. So it's embarrassing. But, like, you know what? People who are professionals, analysts, make mistakes. It happens. Just own up to it and move on. Now it's a story. And now all it would have taken was saying, man, I just completely had a brain fart. I completely forgot. My bad. That's it. It's over. But the initial tweet paired with that makes it look so bad. It's just like it was such an idiotic story, and then the double down on it makes it way worse.
Yeah, I mean, Doc Rivers was very successful with the Boston Celtics. We saw them in the finals twice. They were always in the playoffs. I would assume Jay Williams, whether he was already working for ESPN or just as an NBA fan or former player, watched those postseason games and saw Doc Rivers on the sideline. Did he think that Doc Rivers was just a fan that happened to be near the Celtics bench and that they didn't have a black head coach? No, this was incredible for someone who, again, is a Duke guy, and I don't think there's any connection that the Duke guy is being an asshole, but just he put some himself across, and I think he is a pretty bright guy, to not know this, right? I mean, so it's almost like, too, we're hearing now, why is Kevin Love on the Olympic team? Is he a token white guy? It's like Kevin Love was on the prior Olympic team, right? And I think he has a good relationship with the coaching staff. And the way the Olympic team is constructed now, they don't just take the 12 best players and put them into a team. You know, they want to have some guys out there that aren't looking to play a lot of minutes, that may be able to shoot threes. This is not the dream team, right? Where they literally took the 11 best players in the NBA, with the exception of Isaiah Thomas, for the reasons we know, because Michael Jordan would not have played in the Olympics if Isaiah Thomas was on that team. And then they took the best senior college basketball player who was coming out, and Christian Laettner. It should have been Shaq, but they already had two centers, and they just picked Christian Laettner because he went all 4 years at Duke. So that was when we were like, we're not losing the gold medal this time. We're putting together the greatest team in the history of basketball. Like, do you need to go there that Kevin Love is on there I'm sure Kevin Love gets along with players in the league. I've never heard a bad word about the guy. It's not like they put forth some racist guy to take a spot on the roster. And again, look at the guys that are on the roster. They didn't take the 11 best players. First of all, you're not going to get the 11 best players anymore, because look, if I'm in the playoffs right now, I'm not going to the Olympics.
Some of these guys are, though. But I mean, LeBron's done it. He opted out.
Yeah. If I'm LeBron, this is he's done 1-2 gold medals. It's like he needs to get himself ready for next year. If you're a young player, Jason Tatum, great, go ahead and do it. He wants to see that competition. But yeah, that's another part. It's like, pick your spots to really argue this, because if you don't, then you sound irrational. And I think Jay Williams just sounded like a fool with this tweet.
Yeah, and that obviously made it worse, saying, I was hacked, when it's just like, we know what Twitter hacks look like. They happen, but they tweet, like I said, it's either a scam, pornography, or something completely outrageous. This look like something that come from somebody who's genuinely excited for Ime Udoka and just, was ignorant of Boston's history, or just had a brain fart, which is fine. That's acceptable, but just say it and don't make it worse. And saying, sorry, Boston, sorry, the Celtics, my bad, I screwed up, I just forgot about it. Next time I'll make sure to do my research before tweeting.
I think so much of this goes back to the 80s, when the Lakers and Celtics played 3 finals in 4 years. And there was some racial tension there in the two cities. And Boston was perceived as the white team, and the Lakers were perceived as the black team. The Celtics had Bird, McHale, Greg Kite was the backup center. Danny Ainge was a starter. Yeah, I mean, in
there are a lot of white guys,
Jerry
very good
Seasting
white guys, but
Scott
white
Wedman,
guys.
but great players. They were also coached by a black man in Casey Jones. And I think the perception was, oh my God, the Celtics are this racist organization, which Fred Auerbach was anything but that, because if you just had the sense of history. Let me just tell you a really quick story. Charlton Heston, who, he's Ben-Hur. So Charlton Heston.
Also the head of the NRA, yes.
Okay, this is where I'm going to go with this. And he was the head of the NRA, and he died, I think, about 20 years ago. And I had my restaurant at the time, and, the cool thing about the restaurant is you'd have liberals, you'd have conservatives, you'd have moderates, agnostics.
Everybody's got to eat.
Everybody's got to eat. Breakfast is a common bond. And one of my friends there, I said, Charlton Heston passed away. They go, wow, I saw the NRA director. I go, do you realize Charlton Heston was the only Hollywood actor who walked with Martin Luther King in the 60s? No one else. He was the one person who was side by side with him. So there's more depth to people than he's the head of the NRA, so he's got to be a complete asshole. Or there's more depth than the Celtics got a lot of white guys, but the organization is the Brooklyn Dodgers of Major League Baseball. Even more so because the Dodgers actually got in heat in the 1980s. Al Campanis, who was at the forefront of bringing Jackie Robinson to Brooklyn, went on with Ted Koppel and talked about that. There aren't black managers in baseball.
Very ugly interview.
Yeah, and he also, I think, had either too many painkillers or too much alcohol in him, because I don't think that was really what he felt. But, sometimes when you're under the influence, you start spewing maybe your real truths that you have. But, yeah, so, it's just unfortunate. It's just really unfortunate that this happened. And, again, ESPN isn't going to do anything about it.
Well,
I mean, nor should
nobody
they.
believes him, which, no, they shouldn't suspend him or anything, but they should be
No.
like, just to
Own
admit
it.
Jay. It'd be better for
We all
you.
make
It'd be better for him.
mistakes.
It's not Jalen Rose is making fun of him on Get Up or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. Other ESPN guys are making fun of him. What's his name? Dan Levitard saying, all those embarrassing things that I've ever tweeted. My Twitter got hacked. Yahoo had a write up on it. Bleacher Reports had a write up on it. Nobody believes him. So at this point, just freaking come out and just say it. I mean, I'm glad nobody believes him, but he's the last holdout now at this point.
He's not going on. My dog ate my homework, right? That's the excuse.
Yeah, so it's lame, and it's frustrating that continues to be the perception of the Celtics when they're anything but that. And listen, if you want to have a discussion about racism in Boston, that's a much more legitimate discussion than racism within the Celtics organization, because the Celtics they have a sterling reputation. They've hired plenty of black coaches, and I would venture to say that they've hired more than most teams.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you got Russell, Satch Sanders, Casey Jones, ML Carr, Doc Rivers. So that's 5 before Ime Udoka. And you have 5 championships won by those coaches, 2 by Russell, 2 by Casey Jones, and 1 by Doc Rivers, which I believe those 5 combined are more than the total black coaches have won in the NBA besides them. Like,
I could see that.
So, and this year there's a good chance we're going to have a black head coach win a championship. If it's not Milwaukee, it'll be a black head coach, which is great. These guys are, I mean, if the coach is deserving, I'm all in support. Jason Kidd is a man of color. We don't think he's a great coach, but that doesn't make us racist to think that he's, a mediocre coach at best.
No, it's just this was just again, I get my cackles up because of, whenever it comes about Boston and the Celtics, but especially with the Celtics track record being what it is, and all this discussion recently started by Kyrie Irving about Boston, this just does not help the conversation because it feeds falsehoods into it. Right. If you want to have an actual discussion about it and bring up things like there's severe education disparities in Boston and stuff like that, bring that up. That's fine. That's an actual discussion. But to say, the Celtics, man, it took them, 80 years to hire a black head coach. Well, that's just not true. It's just a blatant lie. It's not even close.
It's not like they only had one. It was just one recently. Like 8 years ago, Doc Rivers was the head coach of the Boston Celtics. 8 years ago. I mean, Jay Williams, if he wants to plead ignorance, I didn't realize Bill Russell was the head coach of the Celtics, which, again, you're not doing your job if you're a basketball analyst. You're supposed to be a student of the game. You wouldn't know that Bill Russell was the first black head coach in all of American sports and won 2 titles as a player coach back in the late 60s. You should know that. If that's what you do for a living, you should know that. I mean, if you're just a player who doesn't really follow the sport, and it's not a big deal to you, you're a goddamn analyst at this point. He's on 4 hours every morning on ESPN radio. So he's dealing with phone calls coming in. Then he's analyzing games with Jalen. Like, it's not like he's just out there. I mean, he's a pretty prominent guy at ESPN. He has to know that stuff. Unless he's
that's
just
why,
not prepared.
Obviously embarrassing. That's without a doubt. But, it's more embarrassing now that he's denying it and saying he was hacked.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's making it far worse for
himself.
Yeah, embarrassing. I mean, he should know that. You're right. He's paid to know that sort of stuff. And it's not like it's an obscure fact. It's a pretty well-known fact. So, it's a ridiculous story, but,
one of the 2 most decorated franchises in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
Like, you should know pretty much that the Lakers and Celtics, what they have done over, 70 plus years.
I mean, can you imagine, Sap, realistically, if the Celtics had gone, when did they become an organization? Like the 40s? So,
Yeah, we're 75 years into it. I mean, there's all different.
Can you imagine if they if they legitimately hadn't had a black head coach in 75 years? 20 years ago, this would have been a discussion.
Oh, of
People
course,
say, what the hell? How are they not integrated with the black head coach? That's why it's so ridiculous. Like, why was Jay Williams in his head wondering, man, why have people been talking about how the Celtics have never had a black coach? Like, it would obviously have been a story if one of the most famous franchises in sports hadn't had a black coach for 75 years. But they've had a bunch.
It'd be like saying, geez, the LA Dodgers had better find themselves a black second baseman. They've never had one. They had Jackie Robinson in 1947. Enough said.
Right. This isn't the Red Sox that didn't integrate
Oh,
until
no, that's a different topic and different subject. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so maybe people are just confusing the Red Sox with the Celtics. I don't know. Maybe that's what
bash
happens.
the hell out of the Red Sox and Tom Yawkey. Sure. Yeah. Go for it, but not the Celtics.
Not this ownership. I think this ownership is pretty good in terms of race relations.
Yeah, they are.
You know, I think, in fact, sometimes people think overly sensitive, you know, with that. So, yeah, I mean, it's you can't win, but yeah, the crux of it, you nailed it, Jet. Not only was he ignorant, wrong, whatever you want to describe it as, but to also then say I was hacked makes it even worse. Just own it and say, my mistake. People respect that. People will respect someone coming out and said, I blew it. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
please
absolutely.
You know, I apologize to the Boston Celtics, the city of Boston, but that's not.
And then it's done, and no one talks about it again.
We're not talking about it at that point because it's like, all right, he owned it.
Yeah. All right, Sap. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented, as always, by Full Press Coverage. Go check out their website for other great content. It's not just our podcast on there, though I do feel like we are the best one, Sap, if I do say so myself.
You sound like Kevin Durant. You know, you're going to start feuding with other podcast hosts.
I might. Yeah. Maybe, you know, when this off season, if we need some news in a certain week, I might start feuding with another podcast on
feuding
Full
with
Press.
other podcasts.
But you can find our Twitters at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer. You can find our podcast wherever podcasts are found. And you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Jet Stryer. We will be back on Monday with a new edition of the pod, recapping all the games over the weekend, giving you our takes on what's going to happen in the rest of the series. And probably I would expect some more coaching hires to happen over the weekend, as it seems like the floodgates are fully open for that. So we'll react to that too if it happens. Make sure that you check us and on social media every day for the latest podcasts and when they drop. And we will talk to you on Monday. See you, everybody.